Have you ever considered the curious paradox that as awareness deepens, a sense of quiet solitude expands with it? It is a strange current in the river of life, is it not? One might imagine that a clearer mind would build bridges to other souls, that to perceive the world more vividly would be to draw nearer to the hearts of others. And yet, so often, it simply reveals a silent space between. You enter a room, a dance of conversation, and the laughter echoes like a distant wave, while the words spoken seem to ripple only on the surface. A gentle play of light on the water, avoiding the depths. And so, you offer a smile, a quiet nod. You join the rhythm of the game, but your own inner silence sings a different tune. You find yourself listening to the music beneath the words, observing the subtle patterns woven into the fabric of the moment. You hear the questions that hang unspoken in the air, and in that awareness, you find yourself in a room of your own. Not a solitude of the body, but a solitude of the spirit. This, perhaps, is the quiet shadow that follows the light, of a mind that sees. A price that is never spoken of in the marketplace of ideas. It is the aloneness that arises not from being a separate wave, but from feeling the entire ocean. Now, let us consider the nature of this so-called intelligence, for it may illuminate this very feeling. It isn't merely a collection of facts, like pebbles gathered in a jar. It is rather the ability to see the string that connects all the pebbles, to perceive the whole constellation. It is to follow the dance of a thought to its very end, even if it leads to a cliff's edge in the mist. And herein lies the great divergence. For most are content to stay in the sunlit meadow. They do not wish to question the game. They simply wish to play their part within it. To question the mask is tiresome. It is far easier to enjoy the masquerade. They prefer to admire the weave of the emperor's new clothes. But you cannot help but notice the space between the threads. You see the pattern begin to unravel. You perceive the beautiful, chaotic dance of its contradictions, the silent packs held up as solid walls when they are only morning mist. And when you gently touch these walls, even with the lightness of a feather, the dream is disturbed. Not because your touch is false, but because it is true. And truth, about a dream one wishes to remain in, can feel like a threat to the dreamer. And so, a space is created. It is not a conscious act, you see, nor is it born of ill will. It is simply the nature of water to flow away from a disturbance. The currents of conversation stay near the shore. You are called too deep, or lost in thought, or a player who takes the game too seriously. And so, you learn the art of silence. You learn to speak the language of the surface, to dance a simpler step. You learn the dance of partial truths, of smiling at jests that stir no mirth within you. You learn to drift in the current of agreement, even when your own river flows another way. You learn to veil yourself, for to be utterly transparent, you have found, is to risk dissolving in the ocean of misunderstanding. To be authentic is to walk a path of solitude. And so the paradox arises. To find oneself is to find oneself, quite often, alone. And in this, the thoughtful mind discovers its most curious predicament. A figure in a crowd, yet adrift in a sea of silence. A voice that echoes, but is seldom truly received. A player on the stage, yet aware of the dream. And it is not a sense of superiority that holds you apart. No, that is not the nature of this distance. Indeed, there is a deep yearning to simply belong, to feel the rhythm of their concerns, to find substance in the music of their daily talk. But the melody has changed for you. You have journeyed too far into the landscape of the mind, wandered so deep into the forest of inquiry that you cannot return and pretend the canopy is the sky. This is the secret of a certain kind of awareness. It is not a tool to be picked up and set aside. It is not a light that can be switched off at will. It is the very lens through which you perceive existence. Once you have seen the ripples in the water, you cannot unsee the pattern. You cannot unknow the echoes once you have heard them. The simple shore is a memory, once you have known the ocean's depth. And you see, so many are content to dwell on that simple shore, within the neatly drawn maps, the reassuring dreams of the collective. They move to the rhythm they are given. They desire the prizes the game has set forth. They recoil from the shadows they are shown, not from a lack of wisdom, but because it is a simpler, warmer dance. It is safer there, in the firelight, together. But your path has led you out into the quiet starlight, and in that quiet, you find your solitude. But now, let us look closer at this experience. For this feeling of being apart, this sense of isolation, is not a static place, but a path with many turns. And to understand this path is to see that you are not fractured, but perhaps, simply, awake in a world that is dreaming. The journey often begins in a mist of confusion. You are new to this awareness, and you begin to see that the reflection in the mirror does not match the form. The words and the music are out of tune. You see a world that professes a love for the light, yet seems to reward those who dwell in shadow. You hear sermons of compassion, followed by whispers of unkindness in the quiet corners. And a question arises within: is the dissonance in me? Have I missed some fundamental note? Does everyone else hear a harmony that I cannot? So you become a student of the human dance. You watch the patterns, you listen, you analyze. You attempt to map the choreography, to understand the unspoken rules of this grand, bewildering play. The others seem to move with the current, knowing its secrets without thought. And so you begin to study the water. You watch the dance from the sidelines, observing the steps, analyzing the rhythm, trying to grasp the unspoken rules of this grand play. They all seem to hear a music that is silent to you. Yet, the more you listen, the more you perceive that the music itself is a beautiful chaos. The steps are drawn in sand, washed away with each new wave. You see the dream for what it is, and that all are sleeping soundly within it. And here, a new feeling begins to stir. A ripple of frustration. You try to describe the dream to the dreamers, pointing to the seams in the fabric of their reality. You ask the questions that shimmer at the edge of their awareness, giving voice to the silent whispers in the collective mind. The truths no one dares to speak, and the dreamers, in their slumber, resist being woken. They mirror back denial, a strange hostility. They call your clarity overthinking, your perception negativity. You are accused of disturbing the peace, of tangling the simple threads. And then, a quiet realization dawns. They are not on a quest for knowing. Their journey is not one of curiosity, nor a search for what is real. They are seeking the warmth of the familiar dream. And your awareness, this clear light you carry, it threatens to disturb their peaceful sleep. So you learn to quiet your voice. You cease trying to bridge the shores. You turn your gaze inward, into the vast silence within. And this brings you to the third great unfolding: acceptance. A gentle letting go. You accept that your inner world may not be mapped by others, that your thoughts are like deep ocean currents, too complex for the chatter of the shallow waters. You understand that your depth will often be perceived as a shadow, your stillness mistaken for pride, your comfortable solitude seen as a judgment. And you accept that you may walk much of this life in a quiet space of your own, not from a sense of lack or being broken, but because the lens through which you see the world is ground to a different curve. And in this profound acceptance, a curious peace begins to blossom. It is not the clamor of happiness, but the quiet hum of stillness. You no longer ask the river to flow uphill to meet you. You cease the endless task of translating your soul into a language they can understand. The performance ends. The curtain falls on the play of normalcy for an audience that was never truly watching. You simply are, alone. It is true, but finally authentic. Apart, perhaps, but at last whole within yourself. A solitary note, yet perfectly in tune, and no longer playing a part. And here, in this quiet space, something truly beautiful emerges. This is the stillness in which you begin to hear the echoes of your own song. They are few, and the meetings are rare. But now and then you encounter another who knows the melody, who sees the world through a similar light. They require no translation, for they have always known the language of your silence. These moments of connection are like stars in a vast sky, precious because they are few. And you find that one true reflection is worth 1,000 fleeting glances in a distorted mirror. And so we arrive at the beautiful paradox of the clear-seeing mind. The very current that pulls you from the crowded shore guides you to the few who understand the sea. But let us look closer at this sense of aloneness. Let us turn it over in our hands and perhaps see it in a new light. What if this feeling is not a flaw in the design, but a feature of your awareness? What if your clarity has not cursed you with separation, but has, in fact, liberated you from a shared illusion? Just watch for a moment. Most are not truly connected. They are simply clustered, like leaves in an eddy, seeking a temporary warmth. But there is no true seeing, no genuine knowing. They are engaged in the performance of connection, playing their parts in the dance of relationship, following the ancient script of belonging. Yet beneath the sound and motion, they are as alone as you. They are simply more practiced in the art of distraction. You, however, have begun to awaken from this play. You have ceased the performance. You have acknowledged the quiet truth. You are, in your center, alone. We all enter this world alone, and we depart alone, and in between are these brief, shimmering moments of recognition, these fleeting instances where another stream of consciousness flows alongside our own, and for a moment we feel less singular. But the clear mind, it perceives this rhythm. It does not need the illusion of constant company to feel whole. It does not require the ceaseless chatter of the world to drown out the profound music of existence. It can sit with itself and wander through its own inner landscapes and be with itself and discover that this is a universe. This is what is so often missed about solitude. It is mistaken for an empty space, a lack of something. But it is not. It is the fullness of the self. And for a curious mind, the self is an endless source of wonder. You can drift for lifetimes in the ocean of your own mind and never touch its floor. Exploring the currents of ideas, following patterns of thought, building worlds from pure possibility, and then watching them dissolve only to reform in a new and marvelous way. Your awareness gives you this capacity, the ability to be alone, without the ache of loneliness, to rest in solitude without a feeling of lack. But the social game, it does not praise this. It casts a shadow upon it. It gives it names like antisocial, or withdrawn, or melancholy. It assumes something is amiss, for you are not constantly reaching outside for your reflection in the eyes of others. But nothing is amiss. You are simply tuned to a different frequency, a different current of awareness. And yes, this stream is quieter, less traveled. Fewer souls may drift upon this current, but those who do, they recognize the music of your being. And so, we arrive at a question that echoes in the quiet spaces, a whisper from the self, asking, is this path worth the solitude it brings? This clarity of sight, would you trade it for the warmth of the crowd, for the comfort of the dream? To exchange your inner truth for a shared illusion? Let us consider this for a moment. But you see, there is no trade to be made. Once the bell has been rung, you cannot unring it. Once a pattern is seen in the water, it cannot be unseen. The mind cannot return to its slumber. Oh, you can try. You can wear the masks and play the part assigned to you in the grand play. You can dance to another's rhythm, but the silence within will still hold your own song. The inner eye remains open, observing the flow. And this division, this internal play, this is a silence far deeper than any room you might sit in alone. For when you turn from your own nature to chase a reflection in another's eye, you forsake the one presence that journeys with you from the beginning to the very end. So you see, you cannot bargain away your awareness for a place in the chorus, but what you can do is change your relationship with it. To cease seeing this clarity as a weight to be carried, to stop viewing your solitude as a form of exile, to release the idea that you are a flawed note in a world that only values a certain harmony, a world that was never meant to contain your particular melody. Instead, see it for what it truly is, a different dance, a different way of experiencing this great mystery, not superior, not inferior, simply other. And to be other is to walk a path of stillness. It has always been so. The dreamer is alone in a world that only counts coins. The mystic is alone in a world of surfaces. The philosopher, alone in a world of busy plans. And so, the clear mind is alone in a world that prefers the comfort of consensus to the light of truth. But here is the wonderful secret, the turning point in the whole affair. This solitude you feel, this quiet space around you, it is not a wall separating you from life. It is life, stripped of its costumes. It is the raw texture of being without. The warm blankets of illusion we wrap ourselves in. Most spend their days in a frantic race away from this stillness, filling the silence with chatter, with crowds, with endless diversions. Anything at all to avoid meeting themselves in the quiet. But you cannot flee from it, for your own awareness is the thing that gives it chase. It gently dissolves the distractions, listening for the silence beneath all the noise. It understands this aloneness as the very ground of your being. And when you cease to run from it, when you turn to face it as you would an old friend, a curious alchemy begins. It transforms. This feeling of solitude does not vanish, but its very quality, its texture, begins to shift. It is no longer an aching void, but a vast, silent space, a sky where you can finally breathe. Because when you are no longer afraid of the silence of your own being, you are no longer afraid of the thunder of the world. When you are no longer grasping for connection, you become a space for true connection to arise. When the performance for applause ends, you are simply present, ready to be truly seen. This is the secret gift concealed within the perceived curse, the liberation hidden within the heart of isolation. It is the quiet strength that grows only in the soil of solitude. For those who see deeply, when they embrace their aloneness instead of pushing it away, they become a gentle, beautiful disruption. A disruption to all the systems that demand we march in step. A disruption to the stories that ask for our blind faith. A wonderful disruption to the shared dream that requires our constant agreement because they have stopped playing the game. They are no longer pretending. They are no longer available to be moved by the fear of being cast out. They are alone, yes, but they are utterly free. And that freedom, that quiet sovereignty of the self, is a ripple in the still pond of a world built on the comfort of the herd. And so, the mind that sees clearly often walks a solitary path. But perhaps this is not the tragedy we imagine it to be. Perhaps this quiet space is what allows for a clear reflection, for a thought to find its own way. It is the space required to exist authentically. Perhaps this aloneness is not what is wrong with you. Perhaps this aloneness is what is right. The world needs beings who can stand in their own silence. It needs those who can see through the collective dream and speak of what they see with a quiet truth. The world needs those who are not so starved for belonging, that they will consume any idea or follow any crowd or become a stranger to their own heart just to feel included. The world needs clear-seeing people, even if the world does not always celebrate them, even if it cannot always comprehend them, even if it leaves them in the stillness of their own company. So if you are one of these people, if the wave of loneliness has washed over you, let this truth find its shore within. You are not a fractured thing. You are not a flaw in the grand design, nor are you a current that is too much for the ocean of being. You are simply awake in a world that is dreaming. And yes, this can be a lonely vigil, but it is also an essential one. This solitude holds a deep and silent value. It is the very blossoming of your own nature. The solitude you perceive is not a sign of going astray. It is the echo of your own authentic rhythm. You are choosing to be a clear mirror in a world that often celebrates distorted reflections. You are charting your own course, while the great tide of the world pulls toward a single shore. You are standing in your own quiet space, in a world that insists on the noise of the crowd. And maybe, just maybe, this is not an affliction at all, but perhaps the most profound grace one can receive, the gift of clear sight, of uncluttered thought, and of an authentic presence, even if it means standing in stillness, and perhaps most of all, when it means that. Because in the final measure, the only understanding that truly matters is the one you find within yourself. And once you arrive there, once you accept this, once you truly embrace it, you realize you were never separate to begin with. You are simply and utterly free.